Good evening. Welcome to a new episode of Trial by Crime. Hoping that everyone is doing well, no matter where in the world you are tuning in from. Now, let's get started because the investigation must begin. On December 14th, 2004, 8 agents from the Jabali group responded to a report of a highly unusual incident, something that is rarely witnessed and could provoke shock and confusion in anyone. Although this has existed throughout history, today it is considered an inhumane and despicable act, the practice of consuming members of one's species, cannibalism. When the agents entered the location, they witnessed a scene that was beyond incredible or shocking. It was horrifying. At the center of this gruesome story was a man identified as Humano de Dios Arias. Inside his home, had prepared various stews and roasts using a peculiar ingredient, the remains of Raul Gonzalez, who had been this man's lover. Humano de Dios was born on April 7, 1978, in La Susana, Tabasco, Mexico. He was the son of Candelario de Dios and Nana Arias and had 10 siblings. At the age of 6, he was abused by a family member, and from that moment, his behavior began to change. He started playing with dolls and would tell other children that he was a girl, expressing attraction to boys. Sometimes, he would play as a gunslinger, running around and shouting, "I'm a bad boy, but I'm also a bad woman." It was clear that his behavior was not normal, but since he was still a child, no one paid much attention. However, as the years passed, he grew up with deep psychological trauma. As a teenager, he suffered an accident. He was run over by a truck. After recovering, his behavior became even stranger. He would often isolate himself and be seen caressing a mare, and when no one was watching, he would engage in acts with the animal. He fantasized that it was an American woman with whom he would have children. By the time he was an adolescent, signs of mild intellectual disability were evident, and he was also diagnosed with schizophrenia. People often saw him talking to himself and laughing for no apparent reason. When it came to work, he was incredibly lazy. He refused to help on the farm, saying, "I don't want to be a farmer," and instead spent his days lying around doing nothing. Every afternoon, he would go out drinking and was often seen using drugs, which became a routine. Locals described how sometimes he behaved like a woman and, at other times, claimed he was the devil himself. When he turned 14, his father, fed up with his son's laziness and erratic behavior, forced him to enlist in the military. However, rather than improving his conduct, Humano de Dios got into trouble with a second lieutenant, which led to his arrest. After being released from his cell, he was consumed by rage, so much so that he grabbed a knife and stabbed the officer in the chest and legs before fleeing from the army. He returned to his hometown of La Susana, Cardenas, Tabasco, but instead of changing his ways, his drug addiction deepened. One day, in a fit of madness, he committed an unspeakable crime. He sexually assaulted his 1-year-old nephew. The baby was reported to be in critical condition, but at the time, the family had no idea who was responsible. They would later learn the horrifying truth when Humano de Dios confessed. In the year 2000, he was arrested and sent to the Cardenas prison. At first, he thought he had been imprisoned for the crime against his nephew, but after serving his sentence, he realized that he had only been convicted for stealing a tape recorder and 5 shirts. He spent a year and 6 months in jail. After being released, and realizing that his family had abandoned him, he decided to move to Chetumal, in the state of Quintana Roo. In 2004, while in Maul, a coastal Mayan region, Humano de Dios got into an argument with a man who threatened him with a machete. The man mocked and insulted him, but in a split second, Humano de Dios grabbed the machete and sliced the man apart like a fish, leaving him on the ground in a pool of blood. That night, as he fled, he claimed that the spirit of the man he had killed began to haunt him, tormenting him for the rest of his days. After this, he wandered through the Petén region, located between Mexico and Belize. There, he came across an abandoned structure, where he stayed for a while. It was there that he met an old man, whom he referred to as the Wise One, a Mayan witch doctor. Humano de Dios made a chilling promise to the shaman. He vowed to murder 3 people. In the same village, he met Raul Gonzalez, a 19-year-old known as El Pelon or El Guacho. Raul had a distinctive tattoo, an image of a woman, and was also a former soldier who had deserted the 31st Infantry Battalion after stealing a weapon. The 2 men quickly became friends, bonding over their shared struggles with alcohol and drugs. Their relationship evolved beyond friendship, and they became lovers. They moved into an abandoned palapa 100 meters from kilometer 216 on the Chetumal Playa del Carmen highway. The palapa was originally part of a real estate development that had been abandoned. Since neither of them worked, they resorted to robbing coastal homes and even offering sexual services to tourists in exchange for money. On December 12, 2004, Humano de Dios Arias' nightmare began. That night, as usual, they were drinking and using drugs. At some point, they ran out of alcohol, and since they had no money left, Humano de Dios remembered that Raul owed him 500 pesos, $25 US. When he demanded the money, Raul told him he didn't have it. This enraged Humano de Dios. In a fit of uncontrollable fury, he grabbed a thick electrical cable and began beating his lover. Raul lost consciousness. Taking advantage of the situation, Humano de Dios hung him by the neck. When Raul woke up, he begged for his life, but his pleas were ignored. Humano grabbed a concrete block and smashed it against Raul's head. Even as his skull was crushed, Raul was still breathing. To finish the job, Humano de Dios tightened the cable around his throat and pulled with all his strength until Raul finally stopped moving. Afterward, his madness reached its peak. He felt an overwhelming urge to eat him. He took a knife and began dismembering his lover's body. He cut him open, removed his organs, and even peeled off his tattoo. The next day, he went to the market, using Raul's money to buy ingredients. When he returned, he lit a grill and roasted the heart, ribs, and kidney. He also made a broth with the organs and fried slices of his flesh in a pan to eat with tortillas. For an entire weekend, he survived on Raul's flesh. Eventually, flies began to infest the area, and the smell became unbearable. It was then that a young man nicknamed La Parca, the Grim Reaper, approached the palapa. The young man, known as La Parca, had already taken a bite of the meat when he noticed something strange. The texture and taste were unlike anything he had ever eaten before. Suspicious, he asked Gumaro what kind of meat it was. Gumaro simply smirked and replied, "It's my lover." Horrified, La Parca immediately spat out the food and ran away as fast as he could. He alerted others in the area, and soon, the authorities were informed. On December 14th, 2004, 8 officers from the Jabali Special Group were dispatched to investigate what initially seemed like an outlandish and exaggerated claim. However, when they entered the palapa, they were met with a scene beyond comprehension. The smell of cooked flesh still lingered in the air. Pieces of human remains were